The title of this homily is God's Labor of Love. Ito yung tawag natin sa English. When you do your work as an act of love, you do not mind the effort. Kahit ano pang sakripisyo ang kaakibat nito. Imagine your lola giving you for your birthday a sweater which she hand-stitched herself for 1 whole month. Labor of love ang tawag dyan. Or imagine your farmer friend giving you hand-picked, homegrown, organic vegetables which he himself cultivated and harvested. Labor of love ang tawag dyan. Today's gospel describes in great detail a farmer's labor of love on his vineyard. The description is actually borrowed from the first reading, if you noticed it. Listen, it says, "My friend had a vineyard on a fertile hillside. He spaded it, cleared it of stones, planted the choicest vines. Within it, he built a watchtower, and he hewed out a wine press." All the works. The description makes you react even more strongly to the injustice that would later be done by the stewards who take over a property that was just entrusted to them. Kinamkam kahit ipinagkatiwala lamang sa kanila. They dishonor the labor of love with their own labor of greed. The story in Isaiah identifies Israel as the vineyard. But in the parable, as retold by Jesus, Israel becomes the wicked servant or the wicked steward. Today, as we celebrate the 5th Sunday of the season of creation, I propose to widen the application. With the earth as the vineyard and us, human beings, as the stewards, ang katiwala. What is it that turns us into bad stewards of the earth, our common home? Nothing but the poison of greed and covetousness, which blinds people with the toxic desire for profit, for power, for control, for ownership. You can also apply it immediately on global capitalistic economies, whether those run by private corporations or those run by the state. The effect is the same. When greed for profit becomes the motive, both the world's resources and human labor become mere instruments of production for profit. Nothing can be more destructive than this virus of avarice that infects humankind and makes us look at creation and our own fellow human beings as mere tools or objects to be exploited for gain. Work is supposed to be an expression of our creative nature as a participation in God's creative activity, since we are image and likeness of a creative God. Genesis portrays God as a busy God, as a working God, God busy with the work of creation. And God, in the book of Genesis, is constantly looking at what He is creating. At paulit-ulit, sinasabi ng author, and God looked at what He did, and He saw that it was good. Meaning He is happy with the result. He is fulfilled about it. And so, He concludes His work after 6 days of hard labor with a Sabbath day. Not just to rest, but to consecrate the fruit of His labor. But then, later on, work will become a curse for Adam and Eve. In the same book of Genesis, in the context of sin, of greed, avarice, the desire for power, work begins to turn into a curse. Naging sumpa ang paggawa. It becomes oppressive. It is no longer fulfilling. Listen to the curse in the book of Genesis, chapter 3, 17 to 19. Cursed be the ground because of you. In hard labor you will eat its yield all the days of your life. Thorns and thistles it will bear for you. By the sweat of your brow you shall eat bread, until you return to the ground from which you were taken, because you are dust, and unto dust you shall return. My brothers and sisters, the global pandemic has forced the world to stop production during the months that we had total lockdowns. And when we resumed, it had to be reduced radically by more than 60% in order to stem the tide of the transmission of the virus. One viral mutation has suddenly put the world on a reset mode, something of a sabbatical that should make us reconsider now our priorities. Like I keep saying, it cannot be back to normal after this, as if what we considered normal was right. This brings to mind the saint whose feast day we're supposed to be celebrating today if it had not fallen on a Sunday, because Sunday is always the feast of the resurrection of the Lord. Today is the feast of Francis of Assisi, October 4, the man after whom the present Pope named himself. Kaya siya Pope Francis, he took it from Saint Francis of Assisi, and from whom he got his inspiration for his two encyclicals, the Laudato Si, on the earth as our common home, and Fratelli Tutti, the new encyclical which he is releasing today, October 4, Feast of Saint Francis. Saint Francis, you know, was one of the brilliant lights that shone during the dark ages of the church, during those times when the popes and the cardinals and the bishops were behaving like worldly emperors, like princes and power brokers. Saint Francis made them realize the vanity of the human pursuit of wealth and power, the madness of the cruel wars and the violent crusades in the Holy Land. Saint Francis actually, in his younger years, enjoyed the wealth of his family and the power that went with it, he marched to war, to the crusade, like a knight in shining armor. But after that, he came home broken, disillusioned, because he had seen so much blood and inhumanity. He was not the same again after the experience. In fact, his family thought he had lost his mind already. His father sued him for giving away his properties to the poor. You probably saw it in the movie Brother Sun, Sister Moon. His father denounced him publicly, stripped him of his inheritance, and reduced him to poverty. The most striking scene in that movie was when Francis stripped himself naked. Naghubad siya at isinoli ang damit niya sa tatay niya na nagdemanda sa kanya. But instead of making Francis miserable, poverty liberated him and made him discover his true treasures and wealth and the beauty around him. He was disowned by his family, but he rediscovered his kinship with the rest of his fellow creatures. Now he started regarding the sun and the earth, the moon and the wind and the water as brothers and sisters and mother. He discovered a larger family in creation and among the poorest of the poor. All of this was captured beautifully in that movie I just told you about, Brother Sun, Sister Moon. And there is that song in the movie that says, Brother Sun, Sister Moon, I seldom see you, seldom hear your tune, preoccupied with selfish misery. Brother Wind and Sister Air, open my eyes to visions pure and fair, that I may see the glory around me. Suddenly, the eyes of Francis were open to the beauty around him. He challenged society to renounce the ugliness of pride and greed and arrogance, and invited people to see their true beauty in compassion to the poor and care for the earth. And the song continues, and it says, I am God's creature, of Him I am part. I feel His love awakening my heart. And the last verse says, Brother Sun and Sister Moon, I now can see you. I can hear your tune, so much in love with all that I survey. Today's psalm ends with a prayer, which should be our prayer during this pandemic. It says, give us new life, and we will call upon your name, O Lord, God of hosts. Restore us. Let your face shine upon us, and we shall be saved. To see the face of God in the world around us, to let the face of God shine upon us, so that we can see our true dignity in the joy of human fraternity, in human solidarity, in what Pope Francis calls in his new encyclical, social friendship. No matter what race, color, creed, or language people might belong to see not just in every human being, but in every creature on earth, a brother, a sister, a mother, or a friend.